Hi everyone, please subscribe my YouTube channel. The morning began like any other, with searing pain coursing through my body and my father's voice thundering through the door. Sophie, get up now. You're not skipping another day of college. I was 19, and for the past 3 months my body had been failing me in ways I couldn't understand. The pain started in my lower back, spreading like wildfire through my arms and legs until even breathing was agony. But in our house, pain was just another excuse for weakness. I said, get up. The door swung open, and my father, James Mitchell, stood there in his sharp business suit, his face already flushed with frustration. As a high-profile corporate executive, appearances were everything to him, and a lazy daughter didn't fit his picture-perfect family image. "Dad, please," I whispered, struggling to sit up despite the sharp pain in my spine. "Something's really wrong. I need a doctor." His laugh was harsh, slicing through the air like a blade. "A doctor? For what? So you can waste more of our money proving there's nothing wrong with you? The last 3 doctors found nothing." He wasn't wrong about that. 3 different doctors had run basic tests, finding nothing obvious, but none had done the thorough testing I'd been pleading for. Each time, my father's commanding presence and insistence that I was just acting out had swayed their opinions. My mom peeked into the room, her face etched with concern, but she stayed quiet. She'd stopped defending me weeks ago after Dad threatened to cut off my college tuition if she encouraged my behavior. "Get dressed," Dad snapped, pulling my blanket off. "You've got 10 minutes." Standing sent waves of torment through my body. I gripped the dresser for support, but my legs gave out. Instead of helping me up, my father loomed over me, his face twisted with anger. "Enough of this act," he said, his hand striking my cheek hard enough to jerk my head sideways. "I'm done with your attention-seeking nonsense." "James," my mom finally spoke, rushing to my side. "She's in pain." "Pain?" he scoffed. "She's playing us, Claire, just like your sister did before she ran off with that painter. It's in your family, this dramatic streak, this need for attention." The mention of my Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister who'd escaped our toxic family years ago, made something inside me break. Through tears and ragged breaths, I glared up at him. "If you're so sure I'm faking, take me to the hospital right now. Let them do an MRI. If they find nothing, I'll never complain again." I saw the challenge spark in his eyes. My father never backed down from a challenge. It was what made him so successful in business. "Fine," he spat. "We'll put an end to this nonsense today. Claire, call the hospital and tell them we're on our way. When they find nothing, Sophie, you'll apologize to everyone you've inconvenienced." The drive to the hospital was silent except for my stifled whimpers with every bump in the road. My father's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his jaw tight with familiar rage. In the ER, his commanding demeanor initially got the usual results. The first doctor was ready to send me home with anxiety meds, but then something unexpected happened. Dr. Sarah Chen walked in, a new neurologist who didn't know my father and, more importantly, wasn't intimidated by him. "Mr. Mitchell," she said firmly after examining me, "your daughter's symptoms suggest several serious neurological conditions. I'm ordering an MRI immediately." "This is absurd," my father began, but Dr. Chen cut him off. "What's absurd is that this young woman has been in clear distress for months without proper testing. That ends now." For the first time in my life, I saw someone stand up to my father and win. He sat fuming in the waiting room as I was wheeled away for the scan. The MRI machine's loud clanking seemed to tick down the seconds until everything would change. I closed my eyes, torn between fear of them finding something and fear of them finding nothing. 2 hours later, Dr. Chen returned with the results, her expression grave. She displayed several images on the light board, pointing to areas that made my mom gasp and my father lean forward. "This," she said, indicating a large mass near my spine, "should have been caught months ago. Your daughter hasn't been pretending, Mr. Mitchell. She's been suffering from a spinal tumor that's growing increasingly aggressive." The word tumor echoed in the small room. I watched my father's face pale, his usual confident stance crumbling as he stared at the scans. "But she's only 19, he whispered, his voice suddenly frail. "She can't, I didn't." "She needs surgery right away," Dr. Chen continued, her tone softer now. "The good news is we caught it before it caused permanent damage, but just barely." My father looked at me, and for the first time I saw tears in his eyes. The hand that had struck me hours earlier now shook as he reached toward my face, stopping short of touching the bruise he'd left. The mighty James Mitchell was breaking, and this was just the start. The days after my diagnosis felt like a strange, suspended reality. My father, who had built his life on control and authority, seemed to shrink with every passing hour. The bruise on my cheek faded, but its shadow lingered in his eyes every time he looked at me. Dr. Chen scheduled my surgery for the following week. "The tumor's position is tricky," she explained. "We need to act fast, but the procedure has risks. There's a chance of paralysis if anything goes wrong." I watched my father during these meetings. The man who once dominated every room now sat quiet, scribbling frantic notes with trembling hands. During one consultation, when Dr. Chen mentioned potential complications, he excused himself. My mom found him throwing up in the bathroom. The night before my surgery, I couldn't sleep. The pain was relentless now, but it wasn't what kept me awake. From down the hall, I heard sounds I'd never heard before, my father sobbing. "I did this," his voice carried through the walls. "I made it worse, Claire. Our baby was suffering, and I hit her. What kind of monster am I?" My mom's response was too soft to hear, but my father's breakdown continued. The man who had never shown weakness, who had taught me that tears were for the weak, was crying uncontrollably. Using the wall for support, I shuffled to their door. It was slightly ajar, and through it, I saw my father on his knees, his head in my mom's lap as she stroked his hair. "I keep seeing her face," he choked out. "Every time she collapsed, every time she begged for help, I punished her. I called her weak. I hit my sick child." Before I could slip away, he looked up and saw me. For a moment, we just stared, me leaning against the doorframe in pain, and him kneeling on the floor with tears streaming down his face. "Sophie," he whispered, my name sounding like a prayer and a plea. I wanted to turn away to cling to my anger, but something in his shattered expression held me there. He stood slowly, approaching me like I might break. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted, his voice raw. "I don't know if it can be fixed." The pain surged again, making me gasp and stumble. Instead of telling me to stand up straight or accusing me of overreacting, my father gently caught me, helping me sit on their bed. "Remember when I was 7, I said through clenched teeth. "I fell off my bike and you made me get back on right away, said pain was just weakness leaving the body." He flinched at the memory. "I was wrong. God, I was wrong about so much. You taught me that showing pain meant I was letting you down," I continued. "So when this started, I tried so hard to hide it. Maybe if I'd spoken up sooner." "No," he cut me off firmly. "Don't you dare blame yourself. This is on me, all of it." He knelt in front of me, his hands hesitating near mine. "I was so focused on making you tough, I became your biggest obstacle." My mom sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. For the first time in months, I let myself sink into her comfort. "I'm scared," I admitted, something I'd never dared say before. "Me too," my father whispered, and those two words marked the biggest shift of all. James Mitchell admitting fear, admitting weakness, admitting he was wrong. He reached up slowly, his fingers brushing lightly over the faded bruise on my cheek. "When you get through this, not if but when, things will be different. I will be different." "How can I believe that?" I asked, the question carrying years of doubt. "Because I've never been more afraid of losing anything in my life," he replied, his voice breaking. "Not my company, not my reputation, nothing. You're my daughter, and I almost let my ego blind me to your pain. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging for the chance to earn it." Later that night, as I lay in bed trying to find a position that didn't hurt, my door creaked open. Instead of the angry demands I was used to, my father entered quietly, carrying a chair. "I thought maybe I could sit with you for a while," he said hesitantly. When I nodded, he settled beside my bed. "Try to rest. I'll be right here." As I drifted between sleep and pain, I heard him speaking softly, probably thinking I was asleep. "I remember the day you were born," he said. "You were so tiny, so perfect. I promised to protect you from everything. Instead, I became something you needed protection from. Please, God, give me the chance to make this right." Morning brought the surgery and all its uncertainties. But that night, watching my father keep his vigil, I saw the first real sign that sometimes the hardest tumors to remove aren't the ones that show up on a scan. The morning of my surgery, I woke to find my father still in the chair beside my bed, his suit rumpled from the night. For the first time in my life, he hadn't shaved or fixed his hair perfectly. The powerful executive who once fired someone for wearing the wrong tie looked completely undone. As the nurses prepped me for surgery, he stayed close, his eyes tracking every movement, every wince of pain on my face. When Dr. Chen came to explain the procedure one last time, he asked questions in a voice I'd never heard, humble, almost pleading. "Please," he said as they wheeled me away, "she's my little girl." Those words, so simple, yet he'd never said them before. I'd always been his legacy, his heir, but never just his little girl. The last thing I saw before the anesthesia took over was my father pressing his hand against the viewing window, tears streaming down his face. I learned later that during the 8-hour surgery, my father never left the waiting room. My mom tried to get him to eat, but he couldn't. His assistant called about an urgent board meeting. He told her to give his role to someone else. "My daughter's in surgery," he said. "The company can fall apart for all I care." When Dr. Chen finally emerged, her face tired but smiling, she said, "We got it all. The tumor's gone, and there's no sign of paralysis." My father, the man who prided himself on perfect composure, dropped to his knees right there in the waiting room. His sobs echoed through the hallway, years of built-up strength collapsing in an instant. Recovery was slow and painful, but different from before. Every wince of pain wasn't met with accusations of weakness, but with quiet concern. My father learned from the nurses how to help me walk, how to manage my meds, how to assist with physical therapy exercises. One afternoon, about 2 weeks post-surgery, my physical therapist commented on the change. "Your dad's like a different person," she said as we worked on my mobility. "When you first came in, he was intimidating. Now he's the most attentive parent I've seen." She was right. The transformation was striking. The man who once refused to miss work for my school events now spent hours helping me relearn how to walk. His phone, once glued to his hand, stayed silent in his pocket. A month into my recovery, he came to my room carrying a small box. "I've been looking through old stuff," he said, sitting carefully on the edge of my bed. Inside were photos, hundreds of them capturing my childhood. "This one," he said, pulling out a picture of me at 6, trying to climb a tree. "You fell right after this was taken. Instead of comforting you, I made you climb it again. I thought I was teaching you toughness." His voice broke. "I was teaching you to ignore your own pain." He showed me photo after photo, each one paired with a memory and an apology. The father who had never admitted fault was now owning every mistake, every time he chose pride over love. "I'm stepping down as CEO," he announced suddenly, putting the photos away. "The board can find someone else to run things. Dad, you don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted gently. "I've spent your whole life putting that company above you. Never again." 3 months after the surgery, Dr. Chen declared me tumor-free. The scars were healing and my strength was returning. But the biggest change wasn't physical, it was how our family functioned. My father started therapy, both alone and with me. He learned to talk about emotions instead of burying them, to show vulnerability instead of demanding perfection. The man who once ruled through fear now suggested family game nights and Sunday dinners. 6 months to the day after my diagnosis, he organized a family dinner. As we sat around the table, me now able to sit comfortably, Mom smiling more than I'd ever seen, and Dad in casual clothes instead of his usual suit, he raised his glass. "To second chances," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "And to my daughter, who taught me that real strength isn't about never falling. It's about having the courage to get back up and the wisdom to lift others when they stumble." Looking at him now, it was hard to believe this was the same man who had once slapped me for showing weakness. The tumor that had threatened my life had also shattered the walls we'd lived behind for years, revealing a father I never knew existed. "And to healing," I added, raising my own glass. "All kinds of healing." His eyes met mine, and in them I saw not the stern executive or the demanding father, but simply a man who had learned the hardest lesson of his life. That sometimes our greatest strength comes from admitting our biggest mistakes. Sometimes the things that threaten to break us end up tearing down the walls we never knew needed to come down.